You spend a very long time, many late nights, putting budgets together for government, and then you get it all out there and everyone in government's really excited to say, like, look what, we did this great, big, hard thing. And you see people in focus groups, literally, quote unquote, what budget?
Yeah.
One of the participants came back and said, oh, state budget. Oh, they have their own little budget too, don't they?
That's cute, isn't it?
It's hours and hours of my life I will never get back. Thank you, punter number 4.
The presenting sponsor for Socially Democratic is Dunn Street. Dunn Street is a campaign agency that specialises in community organising. We only work with people and organisations who want to build power to make the world a better place. And if you want to create change in your world in 2026, then hit us up at dunnstreet.com.au. A special shout out to all of our Patreon members. If you want to join those wonderful supporters of our podcast and financially support our show so we can continue to produce great episodes every week, then we encourage you to click on the link in the show notes and subscribe to join the Patreon community of Socially Democratic. And finally, today's episode is brought to you by Maurice Blackburn Lawyers. For over a century, Maurice Blackburn has stood up for fairness, championing the rights of everyday Australians and shaping landmark legal reforms. Today, they're harnessing new technologies to make justice more accessible, more efficient, and more responsive to the needs of modern Australia. All right, let's get on with today's episode. We are taping this one on a Tuesday afternoon on the lands of the Wurundjeri people. It is the end of the month. It's the end of May. And so that means it's time once again for our monthly edition of the Feeney Files with Jessie McCrone. Mr. Feeney is actually away this week and is unable to attend his own podcast. And so we've asked a good friend of the pod and also a regular guest on the show. You'll know her from such community programs such as the Mailbag episode of Socially Democratic. Lissie Ratcliff, thanks for subbing in for us this week.
Thank you, Stephen. Happy to be guest appearing.
And I can't tell you what a good angle this is in comparison with every angle that David sets his camera up for. I can see a full face. It's brilliant. And I would also like the listeners to know that the whole setup didn't take 45 minutes.
At your end?
No, because there was no David this week.
Oh, right. Yeah. Oh, sorry, you're right. Yes, true. Well, I mean, and the other voice you hear, obviously, is our regular on the Feeney Files with Jessie McCrone. Jessie McCrone, welcome back to the show.
Thanks.
2 things to note. One, David's going to be furious that 2 women are now basically taking over his podcast. He was pissed off when Jessie got inserted into his show, and now that there's someone else, it's going to boil his whatever.
As long as we keep the name, he just will never be invited back.
This also is going to dispel the myth that Lissie Ratcliff and Jessie McCrone are indeed the one person when you're not. Look at this. Got it on record. 2 individual people sharing their own thoughts. Beautiful.
AI can do wonderful things these days, Stephen.
Indeed.
Just have to see if you can go through the entire episode without getting us confused.
Yes, true. Well, let us get into the episode. The main story that we want to talk about this week is the May federal budget, which was handed down earlier this month by Treasurer Jim Chalmers. We had Adam Triggs and Emma Dawson on the program the day after the budget to review it from more of a policy perspective. And they did a stellar job. I needed to lie down afterwards. I didn't know what they were talking about the whole time. But I'm pleased that now we're going to do a politics analysis of the budget, which is a little bit more in my wheelhouse. Jessie, I'll go to both of you, but I'll do Jessie to you first. Now that the dust has settled, what's your read on the political reception of the budget to this point?
So I'm going to answer this in a couple of parts. And the first part is that I don't think the current political read on the budget the current political response to the budget overly matters. Now, that's not always the case when the first budget under Tony Abbott, I think, essentially ended that government, or certainly his leadership, when they made very deep cuts to health and education, even though they said they wouldn't ahead of the election. But I think those who have had the best analysis of the budget is those who have looked at it as one budget in 3. And I must say the Treasurer has made my analysis a little bit more challenging by foreshadowing today that there will be income tax cuts coming ahead of the election. But I saw this as a really clear part 1 budget of a 3 budget plan that the government has. And the first one is to deal with negative gearing and some tax challenges and things that are broadly going to be the less popular of the changes they make, really get in there and make the argument. Everyone's going to jump up and down and say we should do more around income tax. And what do you know? Budget 3, just before the election, I'm going to suggest there may be some income tax relief. And I think that is, I was really pleased to see it, because I think that we are, as political forces at the moment, very reactive. And I do like to see a good plan, a 4-year plan, 3-year plan, depending on when the election is, with different horizons. So I think that the reception right now doesn't overly matter, but that doesn't mean there aren't a couple of things that is worth picking up and cleaning up. I think that the government was really prepared for the fight that they came into around negative gearing and some of their CGT changes. I think that their answers on why shares and trusts are part of the changes hasn't been amazing, and I think that there's a little bit of work to be done there to sort of align the messaging. I'm less worried about, frankly, this sort of startup campaign that has captured the imagination of journalists and a few of the people online. It reminds me of like 2011, where you could get 4 people to tweet something and Latika Burke could write an article about how the online community is furious, because I just think that the capacity for that online campaign to maintain momentum for the next 3 years is going to be challenging, especially given when the orchestrators of the campaign have already said that they've gone for engagement over accuracy in actually what they're saying. So I think there is a long way to run with this budget, is kind of my main thesis. And I think as a political strategy, it's a very sound one. They've picked the generational change that is happening with the voters. I think it is the right time to do it. I'm very pleased that Labor is doing it. I think there are a couple of things that they can tighten the messaging on, but all in all, they've come into a budget where they have done something that they ruled out at the election, and that is not the main talking point of the budget. So if I was the government, I'd be pretty thrilled.
Not without trying, of course. They did, in the first 24 hours, they being those who were opposed to this budget, in the first 24 hours, certainly did try to get up this line that it's about broken promises, but I feel the government kind of stayed the course on...
and took it head on.
Yeah. Lissie, your overall read on the reception of the budget?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a big difference between noise and reality in politics, and the most successful governments understand the difference between those two things. And a lot of noise in the media doesn't necessarily translate to what people, voters, think and how they will behave on the ground. I think my take on budget night was that the government would stick the landing on the comms, and I think I agree with Jessie. There's been maybe some issues that need a bit of tweaking, but I overall I think they have landed it, and they will see it through. I think that the bit that they, and we talked about this on Mailbag last time with Todd, but the bit that they front run properly out of the budget, like the housing story, like they've won that argument. That bit's done and dusted. But because they set the groundwork and they laid the table for that, months ago, really, and they've been consistent in that. The bit where they've had more trouble is a bit that probably had less previewing, and that maybe people were a little more surprised about, and which, by all reports, was sort of a later change that was made based on Treasury advice. But in the end, housing's still going to be the story out of this budget, and Morgan Stanley had stuff out the other day saying that Sydney and Melbourne housing markets are going to see a 9 to 10% drop in the next, I think, 5 years or thereabouts. Like, that's what voters are going to notice. Like, people who are trying to get into their first home are going to have it be 10%, up to 10% cheaper than it otherwise would be. Like, that's the policy outcome the government was trying to achieve. More to the point, there's the political outcome they were trying to achieve. And I think they'll end up getting the credit for that in the long run. And I think, all of the kind of carrying on about, suddenly everybody in Australia is, deeply invested in the, massive capital growth of their business. Well, the majority of people in Australia don't own a business. And I think the government's made the right mathematical calculation on who they're backing in this one, and it's first home buyers.
Can I also, I agree with all of that. I'm not sure we are still in the transition period between generations when it comes to the haves and have-nots. I think we're well past that in terms of the generational change of those people who can't get into the market who now are target voters. It is a little harder to sell the argument about decreasing house prices when you're not entirely comfortable saying that's the objective.
Grabbing it with both hands. Yes, I would commend that to the government. You've pulled the lever. You're going to get the outcome. Claim the win.
Exactly. And I think I get their hesitancy, like the screaming front pages about devaluing your home and those people who are who have a lot of their what they think is their personal wealth wrapped up in their home don't want to hear that prices are going to fall. But we have been caught a little bit in the crossfire with some of the online discourse amongst young people around, so you're not telling me it's going to make my house cheaper, but you're also telling me that I can't negatively gear, so I don't get either. I think the idea that you can't get into the housing market, but why won't you let me have 4 houses is a bit of a silly argument from those who are trying to run it online. But I would say that the message is cleaner if you've picked a side, pick the side and double down on the message.
There was a Resolve poll in The Age and suggested that it was one of the most, if not the most unpopular budget that had been handed down in a long time. And I just sort of wondered about polling voters' thoughts about a economic statement that happens once a year. And I have these images of, the good people at Resolve calling through their list and saying, "Hi, it's Resolve here. Would you like to do a survey on the budget?" And then the person picking up the phone going, "What budget? What budget? Cars? My budget? How do you know about my budget?" And I'm not trying to discredit the results of the survey. I just I don't know how much awareness folks have of what is in a budget. And that kind of set that came out pretty early, like the Wednesday or the Thursday, or maybe the Friday, and it kind of set the tone ever since from the way that the media are reporting, "Oh, this is a very unpopular budget," and then we start to see the things around trusts and small businesses and capital gains tax discounts for them if they choose to sell, and then you get this kind of not investor class, but you call it like this entrepreneurial class come out and start to criticize it, and I just thought, man, the media were almost egging the government on to do something big in this budget. They did it, and now you're looking for ways to sort of basically shit on what they've achieved. We expect that, right? You got to sell papers and, have talk back.
It's a classic thing of do big reform, do big reform. Oh, no, don't do it like that though. Yeah. It's just to your polling point though, and I think Jessie and I both had this, I'll call it grounding experience, where you spend a very long time, many late nights, dealing with putting budgets together for government, and then you get it all out there. And everyone in government's really excited to say, look what, we did this great big hard thing. Isn't it great? And then, someone does the poll on it however many weeks or months later, and you see people in focus groups literally, quote unquote, what budget?
Yeah.
And you're like, what?
She's not even telling the worst story there, which was when one of the participants came back and said, "Oh, state budget. Oh, they have their own little budget too, don't they?"
That's cute, isn't it?
It's hours and hours of my life I will never get back. Thank you, punter number 4.
One thing you did say before, Jessie, and I think, Lissie, you're kind of sharing her thoughts, was has the government landed the comms on the budget? And you were not sure if they completely had. My question to you guys is, well, how does one land the comms of a budget? Because I certainly see the Treasurer. He's been hustling the last week. He's appearing everywhere. He's appearing on some sort of 2-bit pissant kind of social media platforms that I wouldn't even deem myself to go on, and he's there. And God bless him for doing that. So I feel like he's not just doing the traditional, 7:30 report and sitting down with Phil Coury and all that kind of stuff, but he's also trying to go into new media markets as well. I mean, how do you land a budget from a comms perspective?
Well, Lissie?
You both did it, and successfully.
Jessie was in charge of the comms for like 6 budgets, and I only had to do 1.5.
But you get to judge whether it worked at the end, and that's actually that's what he's asking.
That's what we're looking for here, is it? I think ideally, I think the housing bit, for the most part, they landed that because they'd already had and largely won the argument. I'm sure if everybody had their time again, we might have liked to be a little bit faster out of the gate on the digital comms front for this budget. And I think there were maybe some answers to questions from, there's a whole lot of influence. It's not the first time that digital influencers have been allowed in the budget lockup. But I think that this time there probably could have been some maybe cleaner, simpler answers to some of the questions that they were asking, because I think some of them got, particularly early on, got a lot of traction online and a lot of views behind them. If you had a do-over for that part of it, I think you'd want to have maybe a little bit more focus on the non-housing part of the capital gains tax changes and how they were going to be explained in an online forum, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. I credit the government this term and last for opening up the budget lockup beyond mainstream media. Not because I'm one of these people who thinks mainstream media needs to be burnt to the ground, but because if people are getting their news from a bunch of different locations, it does make sense if you want to explain what the government is doing. And even if you take out the political objective there, it is actually your job as the government to explain changes to people. So inviting new media in to have those discussions is really good. I would like to preface what I'm about to say next with understanding that the number of staff the Prime Minister has probably not increased with the different volume of platforms that you now have to communicate on. So there is your traditional media, and they are not being any less aggressive in pursuing the answers they want. They similarly have to deal with being content creators, so being able to provide them with a million different angles that they can do on their little Instagram versus their sit-down podcast and that sort of stuff. So they're hungrier because they're also trying to break into the new media space, as well as dealing with the whole digital ecosystem. And I do think that is the part that has been the most challenging, because it has to be managed in a way that is different to how you manage journalists. You are not always talking to someone who's full-time. You are not always talking to someone who speaks the same language. Like, journalists and staffers kind of have a way to transact. There's a system. There's a whole new range of how the online platforms respond. I think that the backlash to them being in the lockup last time has meant this time they've gone harder, and they have felt they needed to explain to their audience their integrity in attending, and therefore were going out of their way to be a little bit harder than they were last time. But hand in hand with the doing of the podcast and the sitting down with the social media platform like influencers is meaning that you are well injected into a social media space that is 9 times out of 10 just about funny little videos. And broadly, it's not going to be funny because they're really pleased with your policy. Like, they are going to make fun of you. That's how you get like engaging content. So it is a really hard space, unless you're properly in your honeymoon phase, to get traction on without being made look very silly. So I commend the government for doing it. I think that it's a space that we have to be in. It is a lot harder than other spaces. And I do think that if you're going to keep engaging, they do have to resource it in a way that means that someone is there building relationships with these new media platforms beyond the relationships that someone has to build with the Age, the SMH, the telly, all of that sort of stuff. So it's complex. And parts of it, frankly, didn't land into this budget, but it doesn't mean that it wasn't the right strategy and a good try.
Let's talk about some of the criticism and from some of the quarters that it came from. The one that was probably most surprising was there were some criticisms from within the Labor family. There was a bit of pushback on the budget and its impact on small business, in particular tax changes that will apparently mean there'll be less tax discounts if you sell your small business. Jessie,
Small,
what did you...
Small is an interesting word you use there. A lot of the business videos I saw, it was, well, if I'm selling my business for $12 million, I might lose 6 of it. And I was like, I don't know the most sympathetic audience with your $12 million business there. But anyway.
Yeah, Jessie, what did you make of that?
Oh, look, I assume we are specifically talking about New South Wales Labor and the Premier, I think, making some reasonably unhelpful comments about taxation for a couple of reasons. I think that New South Wales thought, we have our own budget coming up, and this is an opportunity to preempt any criticism of ours by making a fair bit of criticism of the federal budget. That happens in politics. You have to pick. And they decided not to take any skin for the Federal Labor Party. I am sure it was noted by the Federal Labor Party. If I'm going to critique the actual grab, though, it is a brave Premier that gives a grab around, well, now you're going to be working for the government 3 days a week, given at some point you will have to increase taxes on something, and it is a grab that could come back around and hurt you quite badly. So I do wonder about the wisdom of giving such a clear, sharp grab that he will be remembered for when he has to make changes himself to the system in New South Wales. And the second piece of criticism amongst all of that is from, I believe, Lockie Harris was out giving some quotes about the budget. As someone senior in the government said to me, because the quote was something along the lines of Lachlan Harris is very influential in the government and in Labor circles, and they'll pay attention to his feedback. And as someone in the government said to me, he's so influential, why is it that he has to speak to us through a newspaper? Perhaps he could pick up the phone. Or, Stephen, get his own podcast so you can criticise on the airwaves like we do.
Exactly. For the folks at home, Lachlan Harris was a media advisor in the short-lived Rudd government.
Yeah.
And then went on to, I think he set up his own Speedo swimwear line, Budgie Smuggler or something. Which
he comes from a family of entrepreneurs, Stephen.
Right, and sold it for a pretty penny, and so obviously he's in a bit of an entrepreneurial world. What about from the Tories? What did we make of... I remember talking to Emma Dawson on the pod, and I said, do you think there'll be a scare campaign from the Tories, and should we be worried about it? And we all came to some sort of uniform agreement. No, they won't do a scare campaign. It'll be fine. But they're certainly trying to have a crack anyway. I just interested to get your thoughts, Lissie, on Angus Taylor's response on the Thursday night to the budget reply, the other thing that no one else watches. That was, I mean, they're really leaning in on, like they've set themselves a course, haven't they, the Tories, and it's going to be about immigration, and they're going to lean hard to the right. They must be literally shitting themselves about One Nation.
Well, I think there's no doubt that they absolutely are doing that. I think Taylor's... Look, if you were going to say anything positive about Taylor's budget reply for the, as you say, 4 people who watched it, 2 of which were you and me, he took a big swing, or a couple of them. But the Liberal Party is just continuing to box itself into this smaller and smaller space where they're just chasing an ever-shrinking number of voters, and I just strategically that's an insane thing for them to be doing. Generationally, they look like they're effectively pursuing a set of policies that are telling younger people don't vote for us, which he seems to be absolutely committed to following through all the way, inexplicably. But I think, I don't think their budget criticism, to your point about the scare campaigns, I just don't think it's been particularly consistent. Like, obviously they hate it and they think it's terrible and world-ending, but their reasons for that keep kind of shifting. So they started with broken promise, and then they went to, they've tried all different variations of, this is going to kill this. No one's ever going to start another business in Australia ever again. And now they're on to, all the people who are apparently saving for their first homes by investing, heaps and heaps and heaps of money in the stock market, which again, I am going to hazard a guess and say is not the majority of people aiming to buy their first home. So they haven't picked a message and stuck to it. And if they were going to get something to really get traction, I think they had to do that. So I don't think they've landed their reply at all.
No, they threw so many Hail Marys as part of the actual reply that you couldn't even arguably they should have just stuck with their changes to the tax brackets. There is a clear message in, one, attacking the government for not making enough income tax changes, and two, inflation is meaning that you are taking a real wage cut in that the tax brackets aren't moving to keep up with inflation. But he then mixed in all of this stuff about how permanent residents shouldn't get to be able to use the NDIS, like all of these other things that understandably were far more sort of grab-worthy, but also far more inclined to upset a lot of people who you need to vote for you. So it's not even just a generational poor pick. They've doubled down on everything Jane Human did to destroy the vote with the Chinese community during the last election, and they seem to have learned very little from the changing demographics happening in the seats that matter now, federally and state, in Queensland, Victoria and South Australia. And New South Wales. South Australia, not as much. And WA, not as much either. Probably more than South Australia. But I think that they haven't pick and stick. And one of, I think, the great adages from politics is pick and stick. Like, pick the side that you are backing, pick the message you are using to convince them of the thing, and double down. And, I think federal Labor could have done a little bit more of that in the budget, but the Federal Liberal Party absolutely sucked at that part. They did a disastrous job of that.
The Greens have come out and described the sorry?
Who?
I know this may not even make the final edit, but anyway, they described the negative gearing and the CGT changes as lacking in courage and pushing for complete removal of the CGT discount with no exemptions. And they argue that Labor's missed out on a generational opportunity to fix the housing crisis. I just like being lectured about being courageous as they sit on the sidelines and take pot shots. And
will likely vote for it.
Of course they'll vote for it.
Well, yeah, and missed out on the opportunity of fixing the housing crisis when they held it up the last time we tried to put meaningful legislation around trying to address housing. It sat in freaking committee for 6 months because Adam Bandt was holding us at ransom.
It also wouldn't have mattered what the government did in the budget. The Greens would have declared it to be, morally bankrupt and insufficient, and declared that, we'll let everybody down anyway.
But to the discussion we were having earlier about pick and stick, frankly, I think that the federal election demonstrated that they should go back to their environmental base and pick and stick their brand differential. And I don't think Larissa Waters is doing anything that is bringing them back to expanding their voter base. To your question earlier, Stephen, about polling of the budget, most hated budget ever or whatever, poll anyone about anything at this point and they're pretty angry. We're seeing a surge in the vote of One Nation. We are seeing a general pushback around institutions or the way things are done. People are looking for new ways. You would have thought in step the Greens with their new way of thinking, and they have caught none of this. Has their vote even really gone up by any points as One Nation has been skyrocketing?
No, well, the only person who did a worse job on budget reply night than Angus Taylor, I think, was Larissa Waters. They all did the 7:30 circuit.
Yeah.
Utterly forgettable.
Agree.
The Teals reported in the AFR this week that some Teal independents are open to forming a more formal party structure and looking to, in some way, bring together all of these what are they called? Community independents, the ones that are all bankrolled by Simon Holmes Court, to form one party. Interestingly enough, even in this initial discussion, there's already been a breakaway from this idea, and some have come out and said, no, I am not having a bar of this whatsoever. So even before it's hit the starter's gun, it's not working. But it is an interesting thing, and it's something that I'd been thinking that this conversation would have happened a lot sooner. Like, I thought it would have happened in the last election cycle, not now, but here we are. Jessie, to you first. What do you make of this? Is this a smart idea? Does it strengthen or undermine their brand as independents?
I must admit, I was fascinated about the actual reasons, and I don't imagine the actual reasons have been publicised. Like, what is the actual point of starting a party for them? Like, they gain all the constraints of being a party and not being able to necessarily be responsive to their electorates. But, like,
it's money, isn't it?
Well, no, genuinely, is it straight up just the cash that they will get for registering as a party? Is it making sure that the cash is distributed in a way that they would prefer, like some MPs, Teal MPs, making more of the pie with a higher margin? Like, you know, in the Labor Party, we have marginal seats who get very upset if safe seats get more money than them. Like, is that what's going on here? Lissie, you and I had this discussion over lunch.
What's going on?
What is going on?
What's happening?
What's the goal?
Finally, got to do it.
What is the goal? Like, what is the point?
Yeah, I think I don't know what problem they're trying to solve. I think these people, the Teal MPs, they have a brand already. It is that they are Teal independents, and the key word in there, I think, is independence. Like, they are all in electorates that were previously represented by the Liberal Party, and all the voters in those seats have made a conscious choice that they do not want to vote for the Liberal Party anymore, and they have selected an independent who happens to be a Teal. So I think if they become a party, I don't know, I think that way, you know, with the Democrats sort of saw themselves off some time ago. I think becoming a party, like, it's harder to run a party structure than it is to be an independent MP, right? I'm not saying that, you know, indies don't have their own issues and they're, you know, resource poor and all that sort of thing, but running a party means a whole lot of administration and structural stuff, and you've got to agree to all these sorts of things. And I don't think this group of people necessarily agree with each other on enough to be in a party. I'm sure they clearly have some shared goals, but right now they work together when it suits them, they don't when it doesn't. And I think they get kind of the best of both worlds. Like, they have a brand, but they're not obligated to vote any particular way other than how they, you know, think their constituents want them to. So, I don't know what problem the people who are in the Teals who are proposing this, I don't know what problem they're seeking to solve by.
It's been put to me, Lissie, that they're trying to seek to solve the problem that none of them get elected to be the leader.
Well,
it means you get a leader of the Greens. That would be good for one of them.
Teals.
Or co-leaders. I think they I think my response to that would be all of those people, and some of them I think were previously members of the Liberal Party, if they wanted to be a party leader, then they perhaps should have tried democracy or insurgents from the inside and taken over part of the Liberal Party, because they are all currently more electorally popular than the party that used to represent those seats. So they're indies. I don't know. I think if they come together, they put everything that they've sort of stood for at risk, and they dilute it. And I think that's just bad branding.
And also,
I was interested.
Having won as from incumbency proves that it wasn't a fluke. Like, it wasn't like a once-off. Now, I don't know what the future of the Teal independence is going to be. Australian politics has a history of accepting a third party for a period of time and then sort of disappears. I liken it to the third airline that operates in the Australian domestic market. You know, we've had Compass and we've had
every now and then.
Yeah, plenty of others, right? And we've always had a third airline, but it changes constantly. And I think in the Australian politics, it's similar as well. There's always been that third party that's hung around, but do they last? The Democrats, the Greens, the Teals, Qatar, One Nation, Family First, like they've all many have come and gone. I don't know if they're long for this world, but they've certainly proven over the last two election cycles that they are very, very capable of getting themselves re-elected. And I think being in a party may actually undermine them in that sense. Well,
and they've also shown, I mean, a couple of them particularly in Allegra Spender most recently, that they're able to have an actual, like genuinely, and a proper influence. And we've talked about this in our respective previous episodes, but a genuine influence on public policy debate. Like Allegra Spender did the work, put out a tax white paper, actually led a part of that debate around, the way tax structure should be done. She sort of backed away from a good bit of that after the budget was handed down and actually implemented a bunch of what she suggested. But nonetheless... I
didn't mean like that.
Yeah, she was like, ooh. I didn't know they'd actually do it. But, yeah, like they've had, like they've got a mouthpiece already. They've got a platform. The media have demonstrated they're more than happy to run their stuff. So it's not like they're short of ability to get their message through. It is like, even if you can get the administrative bit together, it is culturally very hard to keep a group of people together in a party who maybe aren't entirely aligned on what they're all doing there. And the Greens' internal dysfunction, which continues at state and federal levels, I think is a helpful pointer to that.
No one would ever be able to point that finger at the Labor Party, Lissie. I think you're right to say that it's never happened to us.
We have enough long-term practice to remain structurally sound regardless of any personality clashes that may come up from time to time. There's also a structure and practice to manage those things.
I am interested in the anatomy of this story. Like, who was it? Someone who wanted it to happen that briefed it to media, because it felt like it was not well incubated.
Didn't David Pocock put it out?
Oh, did he? He's not interested in it. I also add that whoever asked Malcolm Turnbull to weigh in killed the idea stone dead.
Yeah, I know. You saw his name in the article. I was like, oh, that's the end of that.
It literally was. I think it was the trigger for everyone to start putting out their individual statements saying, I didn't know that anyone was talking to him. I have nothing to do with this. And also, frankly, mate, how are you still in the Liberal Party? Just leave. If you're going to, be out there advocating for the creation of another party, I think you should be able to draw, a firm line. You cannot still be a member of the party that you are in if you are advocating for the creation of another one. New rule.
Yeah, I felt that if Turnbull ever did make an announcement and sort of get it up and said, I formally resigned from the Liberal Party, quite frankly, I never wanted to be there in the first place, everyone would go, yeah, we know.
I literally, when I was reading the article, went, oh, you're still a member. It's news.
It'd be surprising.
Should we do categories?
We should.
Lissie, are you familiar with the category nominations of this particular episode?
Stephen, I'm a regular listener of other episodes of the pod.
Are you excited to weigh in on the categories?
I'm here for it.
Your enthusiasm overwhelms me. Okay, the first one is always the popular one, the Tory with a typewriter or the tree Tory with a typewriter. We have a lot of we have a few I should say we've had 4 nominations this week. The first one is from Ian Hume, and he nominates Cameron Milner, who I think wrote in the Western Australian Murdoch paper for claiming the federal budget has destroyed Jim Chalmers' chance of ever being Prime Minister. And then Paul Bludger had a thread
of internal fights Cameron Milner and Jim
Cameron Milner
have had in the Queensland Labor Party.
Yeah, he says Cameron Milner has his crystal ball out again. Let's see how well it served him in the past. And it pulls up a whole bunch of sort of predictions that Cameron Milner has written about in various actually on the nightly.com, I've never heard of this. One of them being 6 weeks out from the federal election, regardless of the result, minority Labor or minority Dutton, Albanese won't be the Labor Prime Minister within a year from now. 3 weeks out, Labor looks far more likely to regain minority government than it will be a cruel political purgatory for the next term. And all throughout 2024, Cameron Milner also said Labor's only chance now is with anyone but Albo and as soon as possible. And obviously history showed that wasn't.
They've missed the best one, which I have talked about on the podcast before.
What was that one?
Before the election where Anastasia Palaszczuk came back from a Tarago's worth of MPs to actually retake state government, he put something in the Courier Mail declaring that the secretary of the Labor Party at the time should quit if Anastasia does not reclaim the government, which was a laughable suggestion at the time, given there were 6 of them. But They did actually reclaim the government.
And the secretary didn't resign, one assumes.
Very funny. I think there should be bylines on all of these about the intra-factional fights. Any person in the Labor Party who's commenting on the Labor Party, you should have to declare your warring tribes inside of it. Just give everyone actually a sense of what the hell is going on.
If it's the same Cameron Milner, I'm assuming it's the same Cameron Milner that is a member. Well, anyway, was a member of the Labor Party.
No, he is.
Is it?
Yeah, I think it's Bill's chief. Bill's former chief.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah, and former party secretary or campaign director for Queensland from back in the day. Yeah, right. Okay, good. So thank you very much for that nomination, Ian. Next one is from Jason P. He nominates the entire traditional media. Budget coverage described as unhinged. So Jason's not happy about the entire media performance of the budget. And also, while he's at it, has decided to float the idea of the ACTU and industry super buying a controlling stake in Channel 9 and Channel 7. What do you think about that as an idea?
I think one of my colleagues might be writing under a pseudonym.
She's not talking about me, for what it's worth. I think that might be right. I'm not sure that I'm not sure that industry super would consider Channels 9 or 7 a good investment these days. I'm not sure there's enough of a future guaranteed return in either of those.
There's a members' money issue with that, I think.
Yeah.
They're somewhat constrained.
I don't necessarily disagree with Jason P's analysis there, but I'm not sure that I would put the TVs at the top of the unhinged spectrum for this particular budget coverage. I think the print media has been on a proper tear. Although I will say, credit where it's due, the AFR's coverage, at least in the first few days after it, was surprisingly not really unhinged. They got some wind into their sails a few days later. But to start with, they were kind of like, policy makes sense.
It was put to me, Lissie, that's because the AFR are the only ones where the journalists actually understand what a rort some of these family trusts are.
Yes, there was some discussion amongst some of their own podcast people about that maybe the time was up on those arrangements and that it was hard to argue with that.
The party might be over.
Yeah, that's right. People have seen us.
I appreciate the transparency, though, that you can work out which journalists do have family trusts and which journalists don't have family trusts by the way that they write their articles.
Well, and even if they don't, they spend all their time interviewing people who most certainly do.
Yeah.
Another nomination in Tory with the typewriter, Max nominates Patricia Karvelas. So she's from the ABC. This is her second one. Spent months urging Labor to be bold. When they were, she declared it was the worst thing that she'd ever seen and focused entirely on politics, not policy. I did actually go and look for some of Patricia Karvelas' reporting post the budget because I remember seeing her on election night, on budget night, and she was reasonably upbeat and positive. So if it changed, I didn't get a sense of it. I don't know if you guys have covered. I don't listen to the podcast. She does a podcast as well. Her written stuff is not critical anyway, but I don't know if you guys have picked up on anything that she said.
Haven't dived into PK's analysis, no.
No, I haven't saw budget now.
Max is having a second swing at Nat Barr from Sunrise. Max says she was caught multiple times spreading misinformation. However, ministers that have appeared on a show have run laps around her on air. Have you ever caught Nat Barr on Sunrise? Natalie Barr?
Yeah, I've seen a few of these of late. I don't tune into breakfast TV, but the clips kind of do the rounds sometimes, which I can only assume is the point of the content, because normally breakfast TVs generally, of all the news kind of broadcast, it's the most
fluffy,
cruisy. Yep.
Yeah.
Most
You're just
lightweight,
waking up. No one needs to be that angry.
Yeah, if you want to listen to like heavy content at 7:00 in the morning, you're probably on news radio or something.
Yeah.
Like that's not necessarily what people are going to Channel 7 or Channel 9 for in the morning. But the ones I've seen of late, and I'd say this is both Today and Sunrise, they are absolutely ripping into politicians when they go on breakfast TV. So I do wonder whether people are going to start thinking about the ROI on those particular appearances, because I'd suggest there may be other ways to get your clips running all day without getting your face ripped off at 7:30 in the morning.
It does feel like morning TV has decided people do want a side of shredded human with their bacon and eggs. Like it is. You can almost hear the earpiece going off. Like, get into the more. It has been a significant change. And even the way you're seeing Carl Stefanovic's podcast and becoming a media identity of his own is playing out. It's a new and exciting frontier.
Yeah, but it used to be, if you go back sort of 6-7 years, well, maybe even not that long, but you'd put ministers or Premier or Prime Minister up to just do the, sort of rapid fire breakfast rounds with all of them, and it was pretty, like, you couldn't go in there completely unprepared, but it was a relatively light touch, maybe have a bit of a joke, sort of, it wasn't like getting prepped for Four Corners or anything.
No, but it would involve Prime Minister, the Rabbitohs had a terrible game on the weekend. Let's get your thoughts. Like, it was that kind of.
Yeah, and first name basis, not Prime Minister, but Albo or Malcolm or whatever it was.
Isn't it true you're a liar, and haven't you broken promises, and isn't it the case that no one can trust you ever? Like, it's just, full whack, bang. Mm. And I don't know, I think it might be easier to kind of prep for your 7:30 interrogation with Sarah Ferguson than be asked to explain, the 4 reasons why you're a liar while people are eating their cornflakes.
When I saw Premier Jacinda Allen go on a couple of weeks ago, she could not get an answer in because I think it was Sunrise and Natalie Barr would just speak over the top of her and was just not yelling at her, but just constantly interrupting. And I was sort of thinking, what do you do? Like, if you put yourself in those shoes, what do you do in that moment? And the only thing I could think of would be, because you'd imagine the scenario, Premier Allen she was in sort of that park area where they do a lot of that outdoor morning, piece to camera. I'm assuming that you can't, there's no monitor, so you can't see them. You're looking down the barrel of a camera and all you've got is the audio earpiece in your ear. I would just go, look, Nat, I'm clearly not getting a word in and you don't really want me to answer. So what I'm going to do is, because I can't hear myself think without you yelling in my ear, I'm going to take the earpiece out and I'm now just going to talk and give my answer for the next 5 minutes. And I know that's not great TV, but that's the deal. That's the goal now. This is what we're going to do, right? Because what's the point? I just don't see. This isn't great television. People yelling at you. This poor.
Yeah, it's that or say, okay, someone's clearly giving you direction in this interview in your ear. Can we just put them on? Can I just talk to them?
Cut out the middle person.
Yeah,
let your producer interview me. He's frantically Googling. Okay, anyway. Let's go on to the Melbourne Inga In Over My Head award, which is the politician or operative that most clearly looked like they had wandered into the wrong job this week. We've got 2 nominations here.
I have one.
The first one is from Peter. He nominates UK Labor, and he says, with Andy Burnham likely to take over, what should he do? No money for sweeteners, tough calls on welfare loom. And he also says deja vu from the Rudd Gillard years. I know that we had an episode last week with John McTiernan and David about the UK Labor and their state that they're in. It feels like Andy Burnham's going to win. Still got to win the by-election in the first place.
Well, I think this is the problem. If Andy Burnham can win the by-election, he will absolutely flatten every other contender for leader. That is very clear in the polling. It is not clear at all that he is going to win the by-election. So I think that is a watch this space for the next, 3-4 weeks, whatever the next month, because that is a pretty big fight against reform that he has to win. And if he doesn't win, I think that leaves him all in a very awkward position. Because I think, based on the polling that YouGov's done, I think Keir Starmer might have the numbers over most of his current colleagues.
Yeah.
So, among members, that is. So,
God, that's an indictment.
Yes, so that's going to leave everybody in a pretty awkward position.
I had a probably answerable question that I actually wanted to throw at John McTiernan, but we just didn't get there because we ran out of time. And it was, where would UK Labor be if David Miliband had won the 2010 Leadership Challenge at the Manchester Conference?
It might have shortened David Cameron's political career.
You probably wouldn't be you're probably still part of Europe.
Still part of Europe. You don't get Jeremy Corbyn.
Oh,
you probably win the next election. You're probably a
Stephen,
reasonably
your English passport would actually be worth something to me.
British passport. Another nomination, this is from David. No, it's not. No, it's from me. Paul Dowsley, 7 News reporter, ran a piece on the Premier who was door-knocking her own seat of Bendigo East 6 months out from the election and framing it as desperation or dedication. Let's play the clip.
Looks like a door-to-door saleswoman, and in a way it is. It's in fact the Victorian Premier, Jacinta Allen, here in her seat, Bendigo East, knocking on doors more than 6 months before the Victorian state election, trying to secure votes, as internal polling reportedly shows she risks losing her seat at the election, a seat she has held since 1999. Is it a sign of desperation or dedication?
What on earth is this? I mean...
Well, if she wasn't door-knocking talking to her constituents, I'm sure Paul Dowsley would have constructed the alternate piece, which is Premier not talking to her constituents anymore. Like, she's a politician. They're supposed to talk to their constituents. That's kind of the point. They're literally their representative.
Does someone need to sit Paul down and explain to him how a political campaign works? Some of the things that you do to communicate your central message to voters. It's through social media, it's through paid ads, it's through radio, it's through TV. It's also through direct voter contact. You go and talk to voters and hear from them and you have a conversation. Oh, man.
Yeah, frankly, I think this clip has won her more votes. Like, I tell you what, everyone in Bendigo knows she was door knocking now. Do you remember those candidates who are like, actually put the sorry I missed you cards in instead of actually knocking on the door because they thought that the impression that they were door knocking was more worthwhile than the door knocking itself? There's some self-analysis on your own backing of your conversational skills to be done there. But like everyone in Bendigo knows she was door knocking. I also, Mark DiStefano weighed into this, who's a journalist at the AFR, saying, trying to think of the guy who leaks his Ring camera footage to Channel 7 as a gotcha, showing a politician doing their job, ?
I know. Just outstanding. Outstanding. Love to have a beer with Paul Dowsley and go, you're a comedian, surely. This is a joke, isn't it?
You do not want to have a beer with Paul Dowsley.
Lissie, do you have a nomination for Mel Meninga?
I actually do, Stephen. My nomination for Mel Meninga is Tim Wilson, who is the Federal Shadow Treasurer and has just really not done a good job. So he got absolutely flattened on budget night on the ABC in his interview. And then it's just not been, to our point earlier, they've not been able to stick and land a message, which I think Angus Taylor can take some of the blame for that. But I think Tim Wilson can take the rest of it. But I think it really just topped it off yesterday in federal parliament when he was questioning the Treasurer and making various criticisms of the budget. And Jim Chalmers gets up and starts reading out quotes from a book. And everybody sort of starts cracking up because they realise that, in fact, the author of said book is Tim Wilson. And one of the quotes, there's a whole bunch of them, so I commend that little clip, which is going around to everybody. But one of them is, a rigged tax system that favours the few at the expense of the many, is basically Tim Wilson advocating for a whole bunch of policy changes that the federal Labor government has now enacted, in which he is now at the forefront of criticising. I don't think he's having a very good month.
It's brilliant. It was also nominated by Well Done Angus in our Alexander Downer Political Judgment Award. So congratulations, Tim. You've got
multiple categories.
Multiple nominations.
Not to mention, like, coming off the back of the by-election where he sort of, the night of Farah, sort of suggested that if the voters wanted us to be in a coalition with One Nation, well, we'd have to look at it. And then at Parliament the next week was like, I never, ever, 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 ever said that.
How very dare you, sir.
Which, given it was on camera, was a brave move.
It was a throwback to when Labor was in the dark, dark days of opposition federally, and people like Lindsay Tanner and that were all writing these books, and then Peter Costello would get one of his researchers to read it and then pull out some of the funniest quotes and then read it in question time and belittle the opposition front bench with all the things that, you know, whoever's written books basically shitting on the Labor Party. It was just, I was like, can we just stop writing books?
I mean, that's also valid.
Yeah, anyway.
I have one.
Oh, sorry.
Malmeninger. Yeah. Ella McGalvin? She's a journalist. You all know her. I know how to say her name. She has written, several of Labor's lower house seats are under threat from One Nation, including Miss Allen's Bendigo, as well as Petrie, Dixon, Braddon, Hawke, McEwen, Bullwinkle and more. Like, I know that journalists are out there to blame Jacinta Allen for everything that's ever happened, but if we're under threat in the seat of Petrie from One Nation, I don't know that could be seated home to the Victorian Premier.
And also, they're all federal seats. What's the leap between?
Yes. These are none of this makes sense, Stephen. None of it.
What publication was it?
I think it was news.com.
Oh, right. Alexander Political Judgment Award. I've got one, and I regret. It's with great regret that I'm nominating the Victorian Labor State Conference, who voted over the weekend for a motion calling on the release of someone serving 5 life sentences and directing attacks against 4 Israeli citizens in the Second Intifada, and also voting against a motion condemning the Iranian regime that's killed over 45,000 of its own citizens over January. I just find, and I just want to say, depending on where doesn't matter where you sit on the whole foreign debate around Israel and Palestine, why is a state party conference debating foreign policy at all, particularly when we're in the year of a state election? It's always been a weird feature of our party. I've been there when we've had debates about Greece and Turkey and Cyprus and, all of the hot-blooded issues that people are super motivated about, and they always put them up in certain weird parts of the policy platform that we don't actually have anything to do with. It's a federal issue. But it's just divisive at the best of times. And if you think about it, there were Jewish Australian delegates that sat in that room and had to listen to this debate go on in the backdrop while we've got this Royal Commission examining forms of anti-Semitism. I just thought it was just the timing it's just genuinely poor form, and also political.
There is no good timing for this. No, for this motion. The motion was disgusting, and it kind of speaks to the fact that this topic has frankly jumped the shark for a bunch of people within the Labor Party about these conflicting motions that are really just an opportunity to try and get the other side to say something that they're not happy saying, as opposed to possibly, I don't know, doing things constructive that could lead us to better understanding and better connection across communities. Let's not put up motions that deliberately inflame the situation. I just think it's dumb. I don't think it actually helps. And as much as I think it was particularly poor timing, I don't think there was ever a good time for this motion.
No. And after all of the work put into this weekend, where they finally actually moved the conference out of an absolute dumpster fire and moved into a nice building and spent a lot of money.
I'm really angry that
in a generation, right?
They've finally done it.
Yeah, and actually with the aim to make it it's almost like a soft launch for the election campaign and make some signature announcements and get some to start to dominate the news cycle. This becomes the front page of the Hun on the Monday morning, and then the Premier has to clean it up on Tuesday. We're still dealing with it on Tuesday, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, and I think it is worth noting that the Premier did come out and quite firmly say that she did not agree with what happened at State Conference and did not support it, and that should not have happened. Yeah. So I think. Yeah, but I agree. The state conferences should stay in their lane. It's not like state governments don't, and state politics doesn't have enough issues that we should all be focusing on: health, education, jobs, training, you name it. There's plenty of things that we need to debate about and should there, and that's what we should do. If you want to brawl about foreign policy, national conference is in Adelaide in July, and people are free to go as delegates or observers if you get yourself there. But it was not helpful to anyone and hurtful to many.
Yeah, agree.
So to the delegates, I thought that was a good idea. Congratulations. You win the Alexander Downer Political Judgment Award for May. Okay, last thing.
Stephen, I thought you were going to announce you're going to be a candidate to run for the next state conference, and I was going to not be pleased about that announcement, but go on.
Never going back. Flex category, I'm going to nominate a hot take of the month, and this has been on my mind for a while, and I'm interested in getting the thoughts of both of you because you've spent time in CHQs of both state and federal campaigns. But my hot take is that Victorian Labor needs to move onto campaign footing now. And by that I mean setting up a CHQ, not 8 weeks out from election day, but actually doing it now. The more I think about it, there's a risk that we assume that a previous campaign playbook will work again. The fundamentals of the Victorian electorate and the fundamentals of the Australian electorate, I think, are fundamentally changing and have changed substantially since 2022. I think the Liberals and the Nationals are in deep shit at this election. I think that the media are trying to keep this honeymoon going for Jess Wilson. I think both members of the coalition, I think they are fucked. And I don't think there's an opportunity for us to be complacent. And I think that I'm worried that votes are going to get baked in now, and it's going to be harder and harder and harder for us to unwedge them again from who they're thinking about voting for. The research tells us clearly that, when you treat a likely persuadable voter or a likely undecided voter with content, they move over to your column, but then eventually they retreat back and drift back to being either undecided or persuadable. So the implication is stark. If you think that you're going to target these voters in the last couple of weeks leading up to September, the last Saturday in November, it's going to be too late. And I know it's expensive. It's going to be really expensive because you're going to have to set up a campaign operation where you're going to have to get the best and brightest from who are probably working in ministerial offices right now. They're going to have to stop working for those offices because you can't be in there on the taxpayer's dollar. The campaign's going to have to pay for them. It means that if we're going to treat voters with campaign material, we're going to have to do it on a fortnightly, if not, maybe a monthly basis. That's expensive. But if we want to win, if we want to hold on to government in Victoria in November this year, we are going to have to start campaigning now, because I am worried that we are sleepwalking into a loss. That is my hot take. That is a very, very, very hot take.
Yeah, look, there's no doubt this is a different contest than we've seen for a long time, if ever. Like, it is a genuine three-cornered contest across most of the state. And that's, in previous elections, you've got the Greens running in a handful of seats where they're a genuine proposition, but not actually statewide. And there's no doubt One Nation is definitely challenging hard in a whole lot of different places. So, for the Labor Party and the Labor government, you've got your traditional you've got more than one front to deal with. Your traditional people you're fighting in either Liberal or Green contest seats, and then you've got One Nation now injected as the sort of genuine new force in a whole bunch of places. So, look, I agree with you, Stephen. I think to the extent that backing all the late money and the late, advertising blitz to do the job on its own, I think is a very high risk proposition, if that is what is being considered. And I think, look, that the reality is that they've got to keep the government running properly and if I was still in my old job as Chief of Staff, the notion that I would be able to excise a whole lot of people from the operation and hand them over to head office, assuming that, they had the money to pay for that and everything, would be a pretty delicate balancing act that Jessie and I would have spent very many sessions with a whiteboard trying to work out how you could make that work.
Lissie would have been thrilled to hear that 6 months out I was leaving the office. She would have.
Yeah, that would have been an excellent conversation we would have had. But I take your overall point. Like the campaign is on. The campaign is not going to start when Caretaker starts. Yeah. Like, it's on now. And the federal budget is kind of the last big kind of thing that, blows out all the kind of bandwidth. Otherwise, that's done now. So, like, Victorian election's the next big thing.
Yeah, I think that like field organisers and seats now would be the first thing I would do. So, like, even beyond the campaign headquarters idea, Stephen, and you're right, it's a different election and we have to think about doing things differently, but my first step would be make sure that we had those people on the ground. I frankly thought we were too late to have them in 22. We still won quite handily. But I still, like, if I had my druthers, I would have put field organisers in earlier. But we were coming off a federal election then where there had been people out in the field already. So, like, there was perhaps more of an excuse for that. I am
Jessie,
worried
it's also
about that.
worth noting that, like, the field campaign it is the key point of difference in the campaign, well, one of them in the campaign machine that we have versus all of the other parties.
Yeah.
We are the only one that runs proper field and that has the training, the resources and the culture to organise collectively. No other party that we run against has that, including especially One Nation.
Yeah, like the Greens are the only people that come close, and I don't think they do it like us.
Yep.
So, yeah, it is the comparative advantage, and it is the thing that shifts votes, is that. Like, frankly, if you're waiting for late money to come in for a late TV advertising or a late digital campaign, like, you're going to want to hope that is the panacea of all messages. Like, that has to be the best testing ad you've ever seen that you're going to drop like 5 weeks out to lock up the whole electorate, because as people fragment more about where they're getting their media and all of that, like, knocking on their door as our Premier is doing is the way to shift people's votes. So there is all of that. And I will say, yeah, Stephen, I was happy to take 6 weeks no pay. I wasn't happy about it, but like, I did it. 6 months no pay for a ministerial.
Pretty hard ask.
Big ask.
Yeah. Well, raise some money. And there's an opportunity to do it right now because we don't have any funding laws. So take full advantage of it. All right. We're going to wrap it up. We normally do Social Democrat of the Month and Who Won the Month. Do you either have one and you can just do that quickly?
Like, I am going to go with the federal government. They've taken a swing. I think, like, credit to them. This is exactly what we talk about when we elect Labor governments. They make big transformational changes to our economy and to the way the country works to remove inequality and make sure that people are on a more even footing. So credit to them this month.
Good job. Lissie?
No, I heartily second that. That is the point of Labor governments, and they are absolutely living up to that promise.
Good job. All right, team, that's it. That's your hour. Thanks so much, Lissie, for jumping in and subbing in and joining us for the Feeney Files of Jessie McCrone. Look forward to seeing you at the Mailbag episode, which is not next week but the week after.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for having me. You can let David know that I am, available for his next unavailability.
Indeed. And Jessie, thank you so much for once again contributing to a wonderful episode on Social Democratic.
No worries, Stephen.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Hey, Social Democrats. Thanks for listening. Today's episode was hosted by myself, Stephen Donnelly, and produced by Grace Eyre. If you like the show, please rate us and review us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you really like the show, then join our Patreon community for early and ad-free access to each episode. We regularly take questions and comments from our Patreon members, so get in there if you want to have your say. And finally, get all the latest updates and bonus content by following Socially Democratic on our social media channels. The links are in our show notes. See you next Friday.